Hi, everyone. I'm just going to give us one more minute to get everyone in here from the waiting room. Welcome, and thank you so much for taking time out of your snowy Sunday afternoon, if you're here with me in Colorado, to be with us today. This webinar is called Navigating a Cancer Diagnosis. I've turned off all chat and participant interaction features so we won't experience any disruptions during the presentation. But after this presentation, which should take well under 30 minutes, I'll enable everyone to turn on your cameras and microphones so that if anyone wishes to ask me any questions you might have, you can. I'm not going to I will record this session and upload it to my YouTube channel, but don't be concerned with your participation will not be visible in the recording. So this webinar is for anyone who's navigating cancer themselves or is supporting someone on their cancer journey. Navigating cancer not only changes our relationship to ourselves and our bodies, but it also affects our relationships with others and puts us in a position to contemplate like the big questions about morality and how we want to show up in the world. So this webinar is going to provide some guidance for you in supporting yourself or another through this challenging time. This is me. My name is Hailey, and I have a private counseling practice in North Glen. I specialize in loss, change, grief, and life transitions. I am accepting new clients and am able to schedule in-person appointments at my office using COVID precautions, as well as provide telehealth sessions to anyone who's in Colorado. Counseling is an encore career for me. At the age of 50, I finally got tired of people telling me I had missed my calling and should have been a therapist. So I went back to school, got my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from Regis, and I'm just really thrilled to be doing something that I love. One of my specialties is supporting people who receive life-changing medical diagnosis, as well as people who are supporting someone else through a challenging medical time. I am a cancer survivor myself. I was first diagnosed when I was relatively young. I was only 36, and navigating the changes that happened for me because of having cancer was one of the driving forces behind my desire to be a counselor. Although it was terrifying, it also made me acutely aware that making the most of whatever time I have left on this earth, however long that may be, is something I need to prioritize. And this inspired me to make some major changes in my life. So you'd have to be living under a rock not to have heard of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her stages of grief. But what a lot of people don't know is that her stages were never meant to apply to people who were grieving. They were originally geared towards people who were facing death themselves or serious illness. That isn't to say that navigating cancer is always about facing death, but I know from experience that it definitely makes you think about it. And these emotions, denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance are all part of that experience of navigating cancer. But these aren't linear stages, and they definitely don't happen in order. In fact, you can experience all of them in the span of a few minutes and then start all over a few minutes later. It's a messy journey through a range of emotions that will keep taking turns and being more intense as you move through the experience of it. And you'll keep circling back to things you thought you had resolved and then revisit them over time. Another thing to know about denial, anger, and depression is that they are not always maladaptive and can be actually effective short-term coping strategies. Hearing the word cancer when it relates to yourself or someone you love is quite a shock. So denial, I remember thinking, this can't be real. There must be some mistake. I'll play along and get the tests, but they will find out that it was a false positive. So this denial can serve as a buffer that can give your mind time to adjust to the shock. This becomes problematic, of course, if denial becomes so entrenched that you don't eventually accept the reality of it. Similarly, depression can be adaptive in that it can be really difficult to cope with the flood of emotion, like panic, fear, and dread. That can all be so overwhelming and so depressing, and becoming a little numb can be adaptive for a short time. So you let the emotions come in as you're able to tolerate them. Anger is also adaptive because it can serve as a motivation to come out of depression and take committed action. The reason I emphasize that here is because our culture is very, very bad at allowing space for the more difficult emotions to move through you. and have a lot of be strong, be positive messages for people who are adjusting to some difficult life circumstances. And that isn't always helpful. Allowing space for the difficult emotions and acknowledging what gifts they bring and allowing them space in your experience can actually move them through you more quickly. One final word on acceptance here as well. Many people hear acceptance and think that that means that you have to be resigned to being a helpless victim of circumstance, or that you have to find the situation that you find yourself in acceptable. And that's not the case in this context. Acceptance simply means that you come to a place where you have made a realistic assessment of your situation and the options that you have available to you. And you have a willingness to limit your rumination about how things could or should have been. You have accepted that certain choices are no longer available to you and move forward with the options you do have in light of your changed circumstance. Acceptance doesn't mean losing hope and resigning yourself to a negative outcome. It means that you adapt and what you hope for changes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Hearing you have cancer was a very disorienting experience. It really tilts your world on its axis and affects the lens through which you see the world almost instantly. Emotionally, you can be all over the place, sometimes filled with hope that you will beat it, and other times frozen with fear about what if I don't. I remember having this sense that my own body had turned on me and I couldn't trust it anymore. If I could grow a tumor once, what would stop my body from doing it again? I almost wanted to punish my body for betraying me like that. And I stopped going to the gym, began eating poorly, and inexplicably started smoking again after many, many years of having quit. Then I did a complete 180 and decided that I needed to only eat vegan organic food, drink only water, and become massively devoted to physical fitness, all of which flew out the window as soon as the fatigue of treatment set in. All of that is a form of bargaining. Maybe if I do all the right things, I'll be allowed to live. If your cancer requires surgery, the scarring can also really affect your own image of your own body. And if you're undergoing chemo and radiation, you no longer really experience your body in the same way. Instead of this reliable, comfortable vessel you have to occupy this earth, it becomes uncomfortable, heavy, tired, sore, weak, and in the case of radiation, burned and tender. This can really affect how you feel about yourself and the relationship you have with others. You might feel resentful of healthy people, or you feel like nobody really gets it or knows how to support you. People seem to say all the wrong things. You might be afraid that your romantic partner won't find you attractive anymore, but you're also sort of hoping that they won't want to be intimate with you because you feel so uncomfortable now and asexual in your own body. Learning how to love and appreciate your body again can be a long road, and recalculating who you are in this body changes you. Getting back to who you were before cancer might not be fully possible, so learning who you become because of cancer is part of this journey. Sometimes people lose interest in their jobs or studies because what they do or what they were studying no longer seems important or interesting. Sometimes you just feel too mentally foggy to do anything well. The emotional stress of cancer takes a huge toll on functioning that cannot be underestimated, much like many of us have underestimated the toll that the emotional stress of this pandemic has caused in our lives. Most people who have cancer find themselves at some point contemplating the big questions of living a mortal life. People who are religious might question their faith and wonder why God would allow this to happen. Or people who aren't religious may seek out some spiritual comforts or the promise of a life after this one. Just know that this is all part of what happens to you when cancer happens to you. And it doesn't mean that you aren't dealing with it well or that you are weak in your convictions. This re-examination and reorganization of your worldview is all par for the course. Similarly, it can be really scary when someone you love has cancer. There is an overwhelming sense of wanting to help and be that person who is the perfect cancer companion and who is supportive and loving and wonderful and says all the right things, but having no idea how to be that person. You're afraid to say the wrong things or remind someone that they have cancer. So you tend not to bring it up, or you say awkward things that you wish you could take back. Later in the presentation, I'll have some good tips for navigating this awkwardness. But for now, just know that it isn't selfish to feel like this is also very scary and hard for you. It's an incredibly helpless feeling to see someone you love suffer through treatments while you're still healthy. And there can be a lot of guilt with that, along with the helplessness and anger that this is happening, as well as a lot of fear that you could lose this person who's so important to you. It can be a tightrope walk of an experience to honor that for yourself while and as being a good support for this other person and not making it all about you and your experience of it. How much of this can you express in a relationship with someone with cancer, and how much of it should you process outside of this relationship? These things are hard to navigate, and I hope some of the things you learned here today will help you through this. This might sound really weird, but one of the toughest things about having cancer is feeling sort of embarrassed or self-conscious about it and not wanting to make a big deal about it, or feeling like you should be strong and able to handle this on your own. It can also be really isolating because you feel like nobody really gets what you're going through and you just want you to be who you are and who you always have been. But that person doesn't really exist anymore. And now everything has changed. So you find yourself minimizing the experience of it and putting on a good show of being who you always were, even though it doesn't feel genuine anymore. You keep hoping that these feelings would go away if you ignore them long enough. But in the meantime, you sort of feel disconnected from everyone. So I'd like to encourage you to pick people you can be honest with and tell them how you're feeling, and take the lead in asking them directly what you need from them. People are not mind readers and can't give you what you need if they don't know what it is. This could sound like, I don't need you to fix this or tell me how great I'm doing or how strong I am. What I would really like to do is to be able to tell you how scared I am and talk about what happens if I don't make it through this without you feeling like you have to tell me that I'm going to be okay. People are typically very sincere when they say, let me know if there's anything I can do, and are thrilled to be asked for something specific that they can do to help you. If it's hard for you to ask people for what you need, just think about how wonderful it feels when someone reaches out to you for help and when you are able to do something helpful for someone you care about. Extend that gift to people in your circle by giving them something to do for you. Confide in them. Ask them for what you need. People are generally really good about giving you what you need if you are clear in asking for it. Allow a lot of space for yourself to lean into the more difficult parts of this. Express your anger, your fear, your sadness, your feelings of being singled out and unfairly targeted. The best way through these difficult things is to give voice to them. Practicing avoidance, ironically, keeps you in this very situation you're trying to avoid. The cycle of avoidance keeps you stuck and inhibits movement and growth. So be creative in your outlets to allow the experience of the difficult parts of this. Start a journal, see a counselor, or if you're artistic, you can express it with art. Sometimes getting outside and being in nature and putting your hands in dirt and planting something, listening to music and snuggling with your cat or dog can be really comforting. Be flexible and creative in finding something that works for you to let in some of the pain associated with what you're going through. Resist all of those be strong, stay positive messages. It's okay to let people know that sometimes you do feel strong and positive. It comes and goes, and today's a hard day, and that's okay too. Cancer support groups can be immensely helpful, even over Zoom. Just being with other people who get it and hearing about their struggles and successes and sharing their own can feel so good. Support groups are not only a place where you get support, but they're also a place where you can give support to others. And that feels really good when you're a patient and you feel like nobody is asking you for your advice and support anymore and treating you with kid gloves. Even if you think you aren't a quote support group person, I would encourage you to try one. They are rarely what you think they are, and people tend to enjoy them way more than they imagined. Either way, take time to touch base with yourself and get a good handle on what would be helpful for you. And then take a good list of resources and people you have available to you and go about asking for what you need. So when you're supporting someone else who has cancer, we have some tips here for you. The first one is consciously listen. Simply listening to someone with cancer may sound easy, but it's oftentimes surprisingly hard. We want to make things better. We want to fix things. But a listening ear is often what helps the most. Let your loved one express their feelings, even if those feelings make you uncomfortable. You can be fairly certain that if they bring up a certain topic, such as dying, they have been thinking about it for a while. Allow them the opportunity to have the comfort of sharing. Don't judge, don't interrupt, and listen with your eyes and your body, not only your ears. As I mentioned before, keeping a positive attitude with cancer has not been shown to influence survival at all. Rather, it's important to be able to express some of the more difficult emotions with someone you trust and to release them. Next one is deal with your own feelings first. As a person who loves someone who has cancer, we are faced with our own set of difficult emotions and fears. What will happen to them? Will they have pain? Will they live? What will happen to me? How will my life change? Try to face your own fears first so that you are truly able to listen attentively. Although your person is right in front of you, you may be struggling with feelings of anticipatory grief and finding yourself in the difficult spot of trying to maintain hope and grieving what could happen in the future. Finding a counselor or someone in your support system outside of this relationship to talk to about this will be so helpful. There are support groups and counselors, such as yours truly, who specialize in navigating these feelings so that you can be more present, confident, and available for the person that you care for. Take care of yourself. Eat healthy, try to get enough sleep, and maintain a balance in your own life. And that will help you provide the support to the person that you love so much. Next one is say, I love you often. No matter how much your actions express your love, they're not a substitute for your words. Be generous with your affirmations and praise. Even when things are really tough and all someone can do after a round of chemotherapy is just take a shower, let them know how proud you are of them and how much you love them. It can also be really helpful to try to imagine yourself in your loved one's shoes. What does it feel like to have cancer? Of course, you can't completely understand the pain and fears and emotional roller coaster of cancer just by imagining it, but imagining yourself facing cancer may give you some insight into the concepts that you may not otherwise understand. Lend a hand. For those with cancer, life goes on despite running for treatment and coping with annoying side effects like cancer-related fatigue. Bills accumulate, dust gathers. Sometimes it's as simple as offering to help clean the house for an hour is so deeply appreciated. Don't wait for your loved one to ask for help. Just say, can I come over a Wednesday at 2 to clean your bathroom? An important point here is to listen for what they might need and then offer something specific to help. And going with them to appointments, I can't even tell you how much I loved this because attending appointments with your loved one can express your caring in so many ways. Hospital and clinics are frightening places, and waiting can be excruciating. So if you go with them, bring a notepad, ask questions, take notes. When you have cancer, it's so hard to remember everything the doctor said. So being a second set of ears and an information gatherer. Having information appears to ease some of the anxiety faced with people by cancer, and at times can even make a difference in the outcomes. So learn how to research your loved one's disease online. Ask your cancer center for information. Take notes. Ask questions at your doctor's appointments. Keep in mind that some people do not want their loved ones to share the latest information on clinical trials or suggest yet another treatment. But listen to them and always be mindful of what they want and allowing them to make their decisions about what treatments they want and what care choices they make for themselves, even if you might not agree with it. Having a touch of humor can be the best medicine. Be sensitive to the times that your loved one needs to express grief, but also be ready to laugh and smile as well. People with cancer don't want to be treated with kid gloves all the time. Include them in activities. Don't assume that they'll be too tired or won't want to. Don't hesitate to loop them in on family decisions, but also respect their need to be alone. Sometimes our loved ones with cancer claim they want to be alone so they don't bother us, but other times they truly want to be alone. Monitor other visitors as well. Does your loved one feel that they have to entertain people and doesn't want to offend them and ask them to go? If so, gently let those visitors know when your loved one appears tired and thank them for visiting. Maybe the two of you can have a phrase, a sign, or a signal to use to let each other know when it's time to rest and recharge. Don't hide things. This one, I had an experience with a guy in hospice, and he said that it was so hurtful that people would talk about him, but not to him. So loved ones with cancer need an honest assessment of their condition to make decisions that best fit their needs, even if that honesty is painful. Be honest with other family members too, especially children. We want to protect our children from the reality of what a parent or grandparent may be facing, but children often imagine the worst. And even if the prognosis is poor, sharing with children honestly gives them the opportunity to begin their grieving and express their love. Be willing to bend. Family members often have really strong and different opinions when a loved one has cancer based on their own life experiences. Friction develops and hurt and resentment can follow. Your loved one does not want to be the source of family conflict. Try to hear each other's viewpoints, no matter how dissimilar they may seem. And keep in mind that you all have a common goal. You all want to support your loved one. Here's some examples of what to say and what not to say. Things that you should say, like, I don't know what to say to you. Do you want to talk about chemo or the Broncos? Is there any specific way I can help you right now? And then make some suggestions. And just say, this must be so painful for you. I can't even imagine how much you're hurting. Or tell them, it's okay to be crying angry. I promise you I'm not going away. And just saying, would you like to talk about it? And let them know that you're comfortable with hearing what they have to say. And these things are things that you should avoid saying. I know how you feel. Hint, you don't. It's so different for everybody. And saying, I know how you feel because my, aunt died of cancer when I was 17 doesn't feel helpful. Also avoid saying, oh, you shouldn't feel that way or don't think that way. If somebody expresses fear, that this cancer might take their life. Another thing that's not helpful in all cases is platitudes, especially religious platitudes. Unless you know for sure how that person feels, avoid saying things like, oh, this is God's will. God won't give you more than you can handle. It's all part of God's perfect plan. That can feel really bad to people if they, aren't a believer, or if that's not where they're at in their faith right then. Another thing that to avoid saying is saying minimizers, like, well, at least it isn't stage 4, or it could have been worse if it was bladder cancer, or, well, you're 80 years old, you've led a full life. All of those kinds of things are not helpful either. And although it seems like this might be a good thing, all those relentless positivity messages, like be strong, you're doing so well, you have to be brave, can make people feel like they don't have the freedom to share with you when they're not feeling so brave and so strong. So just kind of asking people where they are, asking if they'd like to talk about it, and just being a really good listener can be enormously helpful. So this is a slide about tapping into your support system. Support in going through this time should always be sought outward. The patient should be able to seek support from their partners, their close family, and their inner circle of friends, as well as from neighbors, professionals, coworkers, and extended family and friends. Similarly, partners, close family, and friends should seek support within their circle and outward. But the red arrows represent when there's dysfunctional direction of expected support. Neighbors and extended family should not seek support from the partner, close friends, and inner circle of the patient. And people in the inner circle, even those closest to the patient, need to seek support for themselves outside of this core relationship in service of their own needs. Honest, open, and genuine communication is so important inward, and things shouldn't be kept from the patient. But in seeking support, keep those needs either in your circle or one outward. It's also important for everyone affected to identify who is in their personal Rolodex of support. So the R in Rolodex is for respite. These are the people, the ones that you can go out and take a walk, make you laugh, and give you a break from the heaviness. L is for those people who are super good listeners. You can call them when you need to talk and they won't try to fix you or change things. And the D is for your doers. This is the friend who organizes a meal train and helps with household chores, or the guy next door who mows your lawn or shovels your walk. And the X is for people who just can't be there for you in the way you need right now. They might say all the wrong things, give terrible advice, or even try to tell you how to feel. These are people you can give yourself permission to X off your list for now, or create some distance from for the time being. So for people with cancer and for those who love them, the future is often unknown. And hope is what keeps you going and able to endure the treatments and those personal adversities. Hope can also be very fragile. And sometimes it's tempting to give in to the more demoralizing aspects of dealing with cancer. And this can make a big difference in what treatment options you choose if things aren't going the way that you'd hoped. The feeling of hope and the will to live will vary daily, depending on one's current physical status, psychological outlook, if you're depressed or elated, and a treatment success or failure. The hope is to be kept alive, to live, and to recover through a resilient attitude rather than a feeling of despair. Hope is often a shared feeling with one's personal team of family and friends because the future is often nebulous. Hope keeps you alive to fight for another day, a month, a year, or a return to better health. Depending on what stage your cancer is in, setting short-term and long-term goals will help you define and achieve your life's purpose. Living with cancer means hoping for the best while simultaneously preparing for the worst. You can live with a hope for a cure or remission, or be able to enjoy a high quality life with your family and friends for as long as possible without suffering. Hope may change over time if your circumstances and situations change, but there's always something to hope for. Thinking about hope always brings to mind Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl is my resilience role model. I love him. Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, illustrates how hope can carry us through unimaginable horrors. Even in a Nazi concentration camp, when everything was taken from him, he found himself hoping for a few bits of vegetables ladled from the bottom of the pot of broth and hoping to be worthy of his suffering. Hope changes over time. When navigating cancer, hope might shift as we either recover or the disease progresses. Hope is what keeps us going when times are hard. And it's what drives us towards what we want in life. It gives us something to look forward to and a reason to persevere in the face of adversity. Realistic hope is creative and flexible. It can evolve and nimbly rearrange itself around any changes in our circumstances. And then we come to post-traumatic growth. And this isn't necessary or available to everyone. But there are many people who respond creatively to life-threatening illness and find in it an opportunity for post-traumatic growth. They hear it as a wake-up call and a reminder of how short life is and how life is so precious. And then you do what matters while you can. Experience the joys of living and loving, and let the people around you know how much they're loved and appreciated. You can trivialize the trivial, drop useless commitments, eliminate relationships that are taxing and not worth the trouble, and just say no to what you should do rather than what you want to do. There are no shortages of stories of people who become very ill or face some crisis, yet count themselves very fortunate. In the face of a dismal diagnosis or harsh circumstances, it allows you to take stock of your resources and find strength and love. I remember sitting in my oncologist's office and reading a story about Steve Jobs right before he died. And the article quoted him as saying, "If you find yourself doing something too many days in a row that you wouldn't be doing if this were among your last days on earth, you need to make some serious changes." That was a huge wake-up call for me. I remember thinking, gosh, even if I survive this and live a nice long life, don't we all just have a limited number of days on earth? Shouldn't this how we should all be living? There are gifts in having cancer. It can give you a sense of urgency to live well and do things that matter, Repair hurts, and don't sweat the small stuff. And be filled with gratitude and appreciation for what you have. It inspired me to make this career change, go back to school and study grief, loss, change, and life transitions, and learn everything I could about what makes people thrive and successfully navigate these challenging times. So this is my last slide. It's my contact information and the location of my private practice. If you or someone you know would like to do some individual counseling, I am accepting new clients. I have evening and weekend appointments available and offer a sliding scale fee structure to make counseling affordable to anyone who needs it. I would be honored to support you in your personal journey through cancer, or in supporting you as you support someone else in their journey. So please reach out to me if you have any questions you are not comfortable asking in this open forum, or if you're listening to a replay of this on my YouTube channel. I'm going to turn off the recording now so we can begin the Q&A session.